Hey, if you are here, I'm assuming you got here via Steam and the Steam forums, and you have a rough idea of what we're looking at. So I am working on a tool for creating interactive fiction, visual novels, dialogue, whatever. I mean, it's got multiple uses. It's a simple nodes and noodles style tool, which we'll see in a second. It's not ready for launch yet. But I kind of wanted to find a group of people that maybe wanted to try it out. So I wrote a parser for it as a mini game for the game Kitsune Tails. For, I don't know, if you want to make fanfic or whatever. The goal of my tool, which is called TvainB, is to create something that produces a data format that is quite straightforward and simple, but also quite versatile and can be used in a variety of different ways. For example, if I'm editing a story and I'm previewing what it works like inside the editor or in an HTML parser or whatever, it should in theory work roughly the same way if you're importing that same story into, I don't know, Unity or whatever game engine you're using and have built a parser for it. I don't have a lot of parsers for it. I've got a web-based one which is intended as the reference spec for other people who want to do one, and I also quickly knocked one together the other day for Godot, but my GD script is not great, so it is clunky as hell. I'm hoping people will pick up the slack here and do better things with it than I can, while I focus on the editor and the data format, which I think is more or less cast set in stone. Anyway, enough waffling. So Kitsune Tails, I'll show you first what I've got of what I created as a demonstration. It is very bare bones. There's one background and there's just text, portraits and replies, but the code is fairly understandable. The idea is not as a drop-in thing to just use, even though you can if you want to. The idea is to use it as a starting off point for making your own thing. Hey you, me, first time in the village? Yes, I'm traveling to a village in the north. I am, yes, passing through. About me, about the village. Let's say about the village. Yes, it's our annual harvest festival. A bit funny because we don't actually harvest anything. Stay a while and sample the great food. Okay, I will. Thanks. Some more description. You'll see, it says, I can see a blue-haired woman selling jewelry and a young girl selling bowls of something. So I can talk to the blue-haired girl, woman, or the young girl. So I'm going to speak to the young girl. She says, hello, I'm Kiri. Do you like soup? I hate soup and I want to go home. Do we love soup? Let's say it's not soup weather. That's what I said. I might as well be selling snowballs in the middle of winter, but if you buy some, I get to go home sooner. Let's not buy soup. Excuse me. Well, come back if you change your mind. I will. Okay, so now it goes back to the village scene, and you'll see it doesn't say a young girl, it says Kiri, looking as annoyed as earlier. I can talk to blue-haired woman or I can talk to Kiri. So if I go back to Kiri, she says, you again. You're going to buy some soup this time? And I say, it says, probably not, just saying hello. Sure, remind me, what do you have? I'll buy soup this time. And she's going to buy some? Yay. There's this green one and this purple one. I didn't ask what they were, sorry. I said I'll take some of the purple one. Here you go. I would say enjoy, but I cannot guarantee that you will. And yeah. It goes back here. Blue-haired woman is Camino, in case you were wondering, and she's just here for demo purposes. Okay, bye. So yeah, let's see how it works. This is the story that we were just looking at. It begins in a storylet called main. I'll talk about storylets in a second. It starts at the input node, which doesn't do anything. It links to another node, which links to another node, and this is our first content node. Now, content nodes is what you see on screen, and if you edit one of these, you'll see it has paragraphs, links, and meta. I'll talk about meta a bit later. For now, let's focus on paragraphs and links. paragraphs and links both can have multiples. Well, links obviously because you want to have choice, but paragraphs also let you do multiple paragraphs, and the reason it does that is because you might have display logic in there. For example, this paragraph maybe only shows up if a certain variable or a certain group of variables have certain conditions. And I'll talk about that in a second. And the same for links. Links also have display logic, which are variables. And that brings us to the concept of variables. If you look at content over here, this is the village scene. There's a whole bunch of stuff. And for example, it says a young girl selling bowls of something. And there's another block that says Kiri, looking just as annoyed as earlier. And next to this one, it says display logic met Kiri equals 0, and this one will only display if met Kiri equals 1. And we define this variable over here on the left where it says all these variables. Anyway, yeah, met Kiri 0. There's also one called bought soup, which I use to determine whether you bought soup or not. I'm just using integer. There's different data types here, but I didn't put in booleans because I wanted to keep it as simple as possible and for it to work with as many different game engines as possible. So yeah, for this I'm just using 0 or 1. Met Kiri, bought soup, 0 or 1. Yeah, and the way we use this is in the conversation with Kiri. You'll see both links. You talk to young girl and talk to Kiri, both go into the Kiri conversation. This purple thing is a storylet node. You can just, by the way, you can just drag content in from up here. The idea is that you divide your story into storylets. A storylet is this little isolated chunk of story. This can be like chapters or locations or conversations, combat encounters, whatever. However you want to divide your story up, it is wise to make a storylet for things. I've got, in this case, I'm using conversations as storylets, which you create on the left here. My conversations are all prefixed with C underscore. The idea is that eventually I will have a filter for it, like I have here in variables, where I can just do met, and then it filters it down like that. But yeah, so here you create your storylets. Here's the add button for adding a storylet. So here's the Kiri storylet. Again, like the main one, it pops in via the comes in via the input, and then goes into the rest of the nodes. And at the end here, just before I go to the output, this should be the whole conversation, but if I go to the output node over here, this is where I set my value met Kiri equals 1, and this here linking to there and then linking to here, this is where you agree to buy soup. So so if you go in via this way, it will first go to this operator, which will set bought soup equals 1. So there's two variables that get set here, and then it goes to the output node, which will take you back to wherever it was linked from. So in this case it's here, and it just links back to the village scene over here. Another way you can use variables is via the logic node, which I also have an example of in the Kiri scene. So if you enter the Kiri scene over here, first thing it links to a logic node, and the logic node has met Kiri or whatever the default is. So the last one will always be the else. So you can have as many conditions in here as you want, or many links or conditions, but the last one will always be used if none of the other ones were satisfied. So if we have not met Kiri, the first link will be used, and the second link will be used if we have met Kiri. So yeah, if we're new here, it goes there. If we've been here, it goes there. So that's the other way you can use it. It might be neater than what I have it before, where I just have all the content in one content node. Whatever makes you happy, you use it that way. And yeah, that's it. The other thing that I have is meta content. So the idea with meta content is that everything in here that's paragraphs or links and everything else is part of the narrative and should be completely engine agnostic. It should work anywhere you use it. Meta is specific to your game engine, in this case the mod. So in the mod I have code that checks all of these key value pairs and does something with them. So if it says if it sees portrait, it will go load a portrait called portrait-kiri.png. If it sees top style, then it'll either be top style dialogue or narration. One of them will have a portrait, the other one will not have a portrait, and it adjusts the text size accordingly, whatever. And then there's one for background, which I just called BG, I think, I can't remember. But yeah, there's not much built-in background, so you might want to change that in the code. And yeah, that's meta. I also have, so this can be done in the content node itself, or if you just want to organize it separately, you can do a meta node, which, you know, again, you can just, it's the same thing, it's just separate and there's no content here, so at all. Another thing you can use, so with operator, when you set a value, so I've got a test one called fool over here, test one equals blah. So you can set them as strings or numbers or whatever, but there's a special one which I have called RND, random, and there's also eval. Don't look at that, it's not supported on the mod. So I made a variable called _RND, and here I'm going to set it to a random number between 0 and 3, so I make that 4, so it'll be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is the upper limit, so it's excluding that. Again, this is going to differ based on your engine and how your engine does random numbers. So if you're working on a project with this, it might be worthwhile just, I don't know, standardizing. But yeah, so this sets a random number. For example, let's say we have content over here, we have a link from here to there, it sets a random number, and then we have a logic node that might link, wait, it's bing, 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 bing. Okay, random equals, I should just default to equals, it's really what I use most of the time. Again, your mileage may vary, so if it's 0 it goes to that one, if it's 1 it goes to that one, and actually, you know what, let's just not have something there. Yeah, else it goes to that one. So yeah, random content. And that I think is very handy. So this is where you load and save your create, delete and load your projects. Save data, there is an autosave, doesn't currently work. Save your data often. Download your data will download the story.json. There's upload from disk, which lets you upload a saved story and then cherry pick which storylets you want to use in your current story, either by replacing or creating new ones. It works, but the user interface is garbage. So yeah, that I'm declaring that still in progress. Yeah, and this is where you load your story. We've already seen storylets, variables. We've seen cannot delete variables, like I said right now, because it's a little more complicated than just deleting it from a list. It has to do housekeeping and yeah, that it's, and also account for undo, because I don't support undo right now, but I do want to incorporate undo into it eventually. This is languages. It does support languages. I can quickly show you how that works. Like, let's say you have, let's do content. Let's assume my name is Yaku. My name is Yaku. Okay, so that's English. And let's add another language in there. Key. And then I can change to the other language, and I can just say mi nombre es. And change that, and yeah, you can change it on the fly. That too is a feat. This also works just fine. I will eventually put in a like searchable table or whatever else, just to make it more handy and easy to search. This is settings. These don't currently work either. Autosave works, is implemented. It's just currently disabled. I can probably enable it again. It's just there was a bug that kept creeping in. That makes me a bit nervous. So for now it's disabled. And snap to grid is currently always snapping to grid, so I will eventually put that. I may have this not in here and put it in the toolbar instead. Who knows? Preview is preview. Here you go. Start, blah 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 blah. This should work again exactly as it does in the mod. So that's the whole purpose of this, is to create something that you can use anywhere. And yeah, this will be documentation eventually. It's more than just writing documentation. I want to create it in a way that it can be both all in one place and all contextual, without me having to do multiple sets of documentation. Yeah, that's it. When you're done creating your story, like I said elsewhere, you just download the data and put it where your mod script is, and off you go. So this is the code for it. It's a bit of a mess, very quick and dirty, and I don't intend to really do any cleanup on it. Like I said earlier, possibly it's just a starting off point for people who want to make stuff. But let's look at the important bits here. There's a function called link to, which accepts story and card. This is mainly when you click on a link, this is the function gets called. It'll look at the card types and what to do with them, and if there's things like links or paragraphs, it always runs a condition check on them, which will look at the variables, like, you know, if met camino equals 1 or whatever. And so that is an important one. What you might be more interested in, because that shouldn't really change, because that already supports the content just fine. But there's, in the render function, there's some stuff like positioning of the text boxes depending on what the top style is. And then there's some basic configurations like reply text color, reply text, top text color, reply text color selected, whatever. These are just values from the Kitsune Tails palette. It's not doing anything particularly fancy here. And it's just some default display stuff. Again, you'll probably want to change things. Here's the default portrait that it loads, just to establish the variable. Here's the default background that it loads, just to establish the variable. Let's look for load built in. Yeah, so here's the handle meta thing that I spoke about. So handle meta will just step through that whole list of key value pairs, and it'll say if the key is portrait, then it loads a portrait. If the key is background, then it loads a a value. So this can be changed here. So maybe you don't want to use built-in, maybe you want to use your own stuff instead. Or maybe you don't want to load stuff at this point, maybe you want to preload stuff and just link to them or something. Yeah, that's it. There's not a whole lot to it. Most of this you wouldn't need to change at all, and like I said, it is messy, but I'm not really going to clean it up. It is functional. All the basic functionality of TvainB is supported in this.